I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering. America, welcome to the eulogy. Eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. With all the buffoonery going on around us, I've been really slacking on talking about issues involving former President Donald Trump, specifically the lawfare that is going on in Georgia and New York. For those of you who have not been following it, Fani Willis is involved in a hearing because allegations have arisen concerning her involvement personally with a special prosecutor named Nathan Wade, as well as financial entanglements between the two of them, where defendants in the case are alleging that Fani Willis has been receiving kickbacks financially from Nathan Wade. At least that's what they're calling it these days. And also this week, breaking as well, the crazy judgment entered against Donald Trump up here in the People's Republic of New York City that has Letitia James crowing about taking assets away from Donald Trump, seizing buildings in order to satisfy a 9-figure judgment against him. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about there, but then I remembered I already spoke about this with some really good friends over at American Uncensored News. I did an interview with Rick Trader and George Landrith. You may remember them from Buffoon of the Year. Two awesome guys that I'm really good friends with. And we sat down and talked a lot about these issues. So why not just show you that interview? It seems to be the easiest way to do this. We're not going to duplicate work, and you get to see everything I said over there. So we're going to play that interview, but before we do, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. And if you like what you see and hear in this or any other video on the channel, smash that thumbs up button, like, comment, share the show with your friends, all that good stuff, because all of that feeds the YouTube algorithm.
What? Feed me! Okay.
Thank you so much to everybody out there who's getting the word out about the channel, spreading news about it, sharing it with friends. You guys are doing an awesome job of it. The channel's really grown in the past year so much, all because of you. And to all you newbies out there who may have found us for the first time, I hope you enjoyed this discussion I had with American Uncensored News Network discussing the lawfare with President Donald Trump.
Well, there's certainly a lot to talk about here. I mean, last week, Fani Willis was testifying and kind of doing a horrible job. And it kind of surprised me because she's a prosecutor. She's the district attorney. She's probably spent a lot of time preparing witnesses for trial, explaining them the process and making sure they understand simple things like answer the question you're asked, don't argue with the judge, don't argue with the opposing counsel, just answer the question. And she didn't follow any of those instructions. It was crazy. And so I'm trying to figure out just if you have any kind of overall insights on what you saw with the hearing last week. But what I saw really damaged the idea that she is some sort of law and order district attorney following the law and doing her job. It looked to me like, yikes, she was screaming at us, I have an agenda here, and stop trying to embarrass me by proving it.
Well, certainly she came out like a house of fire, right? I certainly agree with that. Prosecutors, lawyers, they may be able to prep a witness, but they may not know how to be a witness themselves. And it's clear that she wasn't prepped by anybody else. Otherwise, they would have told her, cool your jets a little bit here. Stop disrespecting the court. Stop disrespecting the process and just answer the questions directly. If you have nothing to hide, then everything will come out in the wash and everything will be fine. But she chose to come out wearing her dress backwards, by the way. I don't know if anybody noticed that. She had like the zipper in the front or something like that. I don't know what was going on there. But she just came out calling everybody liars, disrespecting the judge. It was a spectacle. And it goes to show you that the old adage is correct, that when you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client. So Fani Willis seemed to exemplify that. And honestly, I left with more questions than I did answers from her testimony.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. I do think it's kind of curious because she seemed to attribute every time she got a question she didn't like, she accused the attorney asking the question of lying. And if the attorney were just making stuff up out of the blue, that might be plausible, but still a little over the top. But the attorney was referencing other testimony, other things that had been presented to the court. And so therefore, there was at least some foundation for him. She has every right to disagree if she wants to. She could say, well, it's interesting you asked that question, but that's factually inaccurate. She was not my friend. That's a lie. You asked her about getting the lease on her apartment, right? No, that's a lie. It's like, well, no, she should probably just say, no, that's factually inaccurate. I don't know why you've been led to believe that, but that's not what happened.
Well, she's clearly emotionally invested in what's going on here. And emotion is the enemy of reason. I talk about that a lot in my book as well. But the thing of it all was that if you are telling the truth, then there's really no need to go into all these aspersions that you're casting about your former best friend. We weren't best friends. We were best friends. I did sublet it. I didn't sublet it. It was only for this time. You're lying about this. Listen, this all stems from the win that the defendants got in just getting to this hearing with their offer of proof to the judge that the judge agreed that there should be a hearing. And it turns out that some of the testimony that was offered from this other attorney, Terrence Bradley, who was the attorney for Nathan Wade, turned out that he was either claiming to be mischaracterized or it was the product of attorney-client privilege. And, you know, the state of Georgia was jumping up and down about how the attorney lied, and Miss Merchant, I believe her name is, and claiming that she lied is completely inaccurate. She had a good faith basis for everything that she was saying based upon the representations of other fact witnesses that she was prepared to present, but then there were some legal issues with that. Luckily, she got beyond that with the offer of proof from Bonnie Willis's former friend, claiming that she knew about the romantic relationship between them since 2019. She didn't offer much details beyond that, but she certainly offered that, and that was good enough to get beyond any further issues with the offer of proof from the defendants there. But once that happened, you know, Bonnie Willis came in storming, vehemently denying everything, and, well, you guys saw the rest, and there's clips of it pretty much all over the internet right now, where if I was Bonnie Willis or working in this prosecutor's office, I'd have secondhand embarrassment right now.
Hey, Gene, speaking of those clips, I want to play a clip for you and for George. And after I play the clip, I want you and George to comment. You know, you said she was on fire, she was angry, and I want to get you and George to comment on that.
Perhaps you could lead the witness.
I will. Thank you, Judge. Isn't it true that you met Mr. Wade October 2019 at the judge's conference?
We haven't gotten to the point where Ms. Willis should be treated hostile in this situation.
I think we have.
I very much want to be here, so I'm not a hostile witness. I very much want to be
Not
here.
so much that you're hostile, Ms. Willis, it'd be an adverse witness. Your interests are opposed to Ms. Merchant's.
Thank you.
Merchant's interests are contrary to democracy, Your Honor, not to mine.
All right.
Judge, I would just ask that we
keep things moving. Ms. Merchant,
Thank you.
next question,
Thank you.
please.
Okay, so we've confirmed when you met. After that, isn't it true?
No, I need to explain this, and I think I get to explain my answers. When I met him, Judge Reeves introduced us. He handed me, I'm unsure if I handed him my business card, but we exchanged information. He said, if you ever need any help, give me a call. And he walked to the parking lot.
So after that, you started dating shortly thereafter, correct?
A lie. That's one of your lies.
Do you know Robin Yurdy?
I know her as Robin Bryant.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, just the kind of overall hostility. She's arguing that she's not a hostile witness, and then she basically acts like, well, I'm standing up for democracy, and this other attorney over here, she hates democracy. And it's like, but we're, you know, but I'm not a hostile witness. I'm like, really? Okay, that's interesting, because, you know.
She clearly wasn't thinking like a prosecutor there, right? Because when you talk about a hostile witness, you're talking about someone adverse to the interests of the party doing the questioning. That's what it really means. It doesn't mean that she's acting hostilely, although she clearly was. And honestly, Judge McAfee is a saint, because any other judge would have seen that sort of sass and that sort of attitude. I think there would have been definitely a reprimand, maybe gone off the record and given a reprimand, something like that, to Bonnie Willis. She only got 2 warnings throughout the balance of her testimony about the way that she was acting. Frankly, If I was the judge there, regardless of whether this woman is a Democrat, Republican, whatever, the disrespect shown to the court, I would have held her in contempt. That's just me, because there was repeated instances of not only hostility about you're a liar and things like that, but disrespect to the court, unnecessary commentary, attitude, the way she was sitting back in her chair and just oozing this negativity. Absolutely, there would have been a stern talking to one time, a second time, and then 3 strikes, you're out. This judge, Judge McAfee, was a saint, and he was more interested in getting the proceedings moving than he was in dealing with Fonnie Wilson's nonsense.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing to watch, because he was pretty tolerant of the craziness that was going on, and it wasn't coming from the attorney that you don't see on camera there. It was all coming from Fonnie Willis. And it was just kind of interesting. And then I kind of thought that her boyfriend's testimony, he was a little less, if you will, confrontational, but he did spend an awful lot of time trying to parse words and playing a lot of weird kind of what I'd call word games.
Oh, total semantics.
Yeah, semantics. And it's the kind of thing that I think when someone spends a little too much time there, I mean, words matter. So I'm not saying they don't, but it was just kind of weird to listen to them spend all their time parsing, but we're supposed to believe that they're telling us the truth.
Well, not only that, you expect better practices from practicing attorneys, especially those who are employed by the government, especially those in positions of power like Nathan Wade and Fonnie Willis are. I mean, are we really meant to believe that Nathan Wade had no receipts and didn't realize that credit card statements can act as those receipts? Really? We're supposed to believe that from him, that, oh, I don't have receipts, but I have credit card statements? And are we really meant to believe that he used his business card to put everything on for trips and things like that, but then accepted cash and had no record of the cash? And moreover, mentioned that he had, in his practice, taken cash from clients and not put it in the bank or reported or anything like that? It strains credulity. And frankly, I thought Nathan Wade was shadier than Fonnie Willis, because he was trying to perform a little agenda gymnastics routine, trying to overthink the question and slip slide and duck and dodge and shuck and jive these questions. To me, that showed that a knowledge and intent of wrongdoing more than anything else.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. I have to be honest, when I watched this, when I've seen, for example, and read about what Fonnie Willis has to say in the news, I was never really overwhelmed with her, what I call her intelligence or her legal acumen. I always kind of thought, wow, I'm trying to figure out if she were one of my law students, if she could even get a passing grade in the class with that kind of crap. And then I watched her testimony and I thought to myself, this does not sound, I mean, if she were basically just a normal fact witness off the street, I'd have a little more tolerance for the crap she was trying to pull, but not a lot. But when you're the DA, you know the process, you know how this is played and all that. And I was stunned, and I thought to myself, same thing with her boyfriend, Mr. Wade. I just thought, they're not showing me that they're particularly good attorneys, they're particularly bright or intelligent attorneys, or that they have any real skill sets. They're just political players. That's the conclusion I came to. Am I being too harsh?
I don't think you're being too harsh, but I think you are missing, and maybe you don't appreciate the arrogance and audacity of what they're doing, because if it is true that all of this was done with cash and there's no paper trail, it's takes a lot of effort to not create a paper trail, especially in this modern age. To be able to say, I have cash on hand, I don't know when I took it out, I don't know, what my statements would say about it, but I had this cash on me and then I used it. It's a very specific thing, especially when you consider that Fonnie Willis also has a documented history in the evidence of using online transactions like a Zelle and like others out there for paying rent, for example. And she has a track record of paying, and she has receipts for that. But for this, she chose to use cash and not create a paper trail, knowing that she's a public official, knowing that she would have to account for certain gifts over $100 pursuant to Georgia law, and knowing that she's dealing with maybe the biggest prosecution in the history of the state of Georgia. Yet she chose not to do all these things. It's very interesting.
Gentlemen, I want to play, Gene, when you're talking about political players, I want to play 2 clips of Fani Willis. One, where, excuse me, it sounds like to me she's admitting taking cash from her campaign, and two, talking, and this comes from when, not from the testimony the other day, the hearing, but this other video clip comes when she was running for Attorney General and the promise she made to the people.
Wait, it's been my whole life. When I took out a large amount of money on my first campaign, I kept some of the cash of that. Like, to tell you, I just have cash in my house. I don't have as much today as I would normally have, but I'm building back up now. So you just put money in. It's a very good practice. I would advise it to all women.
So you can't identify when you came into this cash or where the cash came from?
I didn't say I couldn't identify it. No, nobody gives me anything. I am sure that the source of the money is always the work, sweat, and tears of me. What you asked me for is, when did the money go in there? What I am trying to tell you is, I divorced in 2005 from my husband. No. It's important. You said, where did the money come from? And I need to tell you where the money came from. And so for many years, I have kept money in my house. That money in my worst days has probably only been $500 or $1,000. At my best days, I probably have my house cash. At all times, there's going to be cash in my house.
Because they deserve a DA that won't have sex with his employees. Because they deserve a DA that won't put money in their own pocket when it should go to benefit children. Because we deserve better. Because they deserve a DA that won't have sex with his employees. Because they deserve a DA that won't put money in their own pocket when it should go to benefit children. Because we deserve better.
All right, Gene, George, there you go. Well, first of all, this admission, and maybe I'm making too much of this. Maybe candidates do this all the time. I don't know. But this admission that, number one, she took campaign cash home, obviously mixed it with all the other cash that she's got there. I'm sure she didn't have a separate safe. Number two, it's a strange admission for somebody to admit to the world they keep cash in their home. And then the other video clip, an interview when she was running for district attorney. She would never, ever, ever sleep with anybody who worked for her. Gee, I wonder what Nathan Wade was doing.
Well, there's two things that I can really say about those clips. The first thing is, if we're playing the Nathan Wade semantic game, technically Fani Willis did not sleep with an employee. She slept with a contractor. So, word games people play and all that. I'm sure that's one thing that they can say to try to duck and dive and dodge through those clips and not be called to account. The second thing is, and George, I'm sure that you would agree with this, when you have a witness that you're deposing or that you're examining on a stand, the best thing you can do, especially when they're chatty like Fani Willis was, just let them keep talking. They're going to talk themselves into a corner, and sooner or later you're going to catch them in something. It happens all the time. I've seen it in depositions that I take all the time as well. Fani Willis has diarrhea of the mouth, and it got her in trouble. And I think that the Georgia State campaign finance people will be looking into that statement to see exactly what transaction she's talking about, what the amount of it was, and it may be a problem separate and apart from this entire investigation concerning the conflict and possible disqualification of her office.
Very, very interesting, and I think well said. Good points.
Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show.
Gene Berardelli is our guest. He's also a great friend of the show, Conservative Commandos and the AUN-TV network. He's also the author of the book, Schnooks, Crooks, Liars, and Scoundrels. Hey, Gene, do you think Fani Willis is going to be in that book next year, or do you think that she's going to be a contender for, what do we call that?
Buffoon of the year. Absolutely. She is an early contender, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, she exhibited the hubris, the arrogance, the narcissism of a buffoon. She clearly is acting hypocritically based upon the clips that you played and so expertly curated, Rick. So absolutely, there's oodles of buffoonery to come from Fani Willis. And who knows, maybe there's more to come in the offing.
Hey, you know what, Gene? I am a huge fan of Court TV. I can't tell you the trials that I watch, just on trial after trial after trial. I have never seen courtroom drama like that hearing the other day. I have never seen a judge let a witness get away with as much as he did the other day. Gene, I hope the next time I go to traffic court, I have that guy as my judge. Seriously, Judge Gene, in all years of lawyering, being in practice, hearing cases, going into court, have you ever seen anything like this? Have you ever seen a judge be as lenient with the witness?
I have when they are pro se witnesses without representation. I've seen the court bend over backwards for any party that shows up to court, doesn't have an attorney, and has to proceed anyway. But as far as an elected DA, I don't practice criminal law, and I like to think that I watch as much court TV as you, Rick. But certainly, I can't think of any judge here in the People's Republic of New York that would have tolerated such, insolent behavior is the only thing I can think to call it. Listen, I've seen clients and I've seen, just lay people walking out of the courtroom saying, something is BS and screaming and carrying on, but not from a licensed professional, let alone an elected official. Absolutely not.
Gene, what was of all the things that came out at this hearing, what was the thing that surprised you the most?
So what surprised me the most really was the testimony of Fani Willis's father. Because if you listen to what her testimony was, she was lining up that her father had talked to her about keeping money in the house and having cash on hand at all times. It turned out that the testimony of the father did say that, but the father, who's an attorney himself as well, a retired attorney, also said that he was prepped not only by the prosecutor's office with his testimony, but that his daughter was present during that testimony. Not only that, but he also admitted to violating the rules of sequestration. The witnesses are supposed to not talk about cases, not expose themselves to media about the cases. He freely admitted to reading newspaper accounts, watching a video of her daughter's testimony and all that. To me, that completely discredited the Willis narrative about having cash on hand like that. And it certainly calls into question whether or not that testimony was contrived or not by Fani Willis and her father in those meetings with the attorney's office, with the prosecutor's office.
Gene, with all the talk about cash going back and forth, and her boyfriend even admitted he took cash from clients and things, do you think the IRS is going to be sending these two people letters?
I doubt it, but they should. I mean, as an attorney, I would never take cash. I would always have a paper trail. And if I do take cash, it goes into the account that
Well, why do you doubt
day.
that they're going to get letters, Gene?
Well, I think they won't get letters because an investigation of that magnitude could derail what the prosecutor is attempting to do, which is really to persecute, not prosecute Donald Trump for his actions in the 2020 election. And I think that those actions are sanctioned by the Biden administration and indeed encouraged in many respects. So I don't really see that happening. Listen, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist on all of this, but it seems clear to me that this DA had a political motivation. And if she's wearing the same jersey, the same colors as the administration, it certainly would call into question whether the IRS would step in on these transactions, because again, there's no specificity. They can come up with any different reason as to not start an investigation or not. The testimony alone may not be enough to trigger an investigation. There would have to be someone that said, I gave him cash and I saw him pocket it, for example. I don't think we have that here. So certainly I think that campaign finance at the state level, possibly some Department of Taxation, some IRS investigation should happen. Do I think it's going to? No, I don't think it's going to.
Well, Gene, this is where two streams of water come together, a muddy stream and a clear stream of water. Gene, you have, obviously you're involved with the law. You are an attorney. You are a trial attorney. You also have played around politics a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what frustrates me, Gene? The fact that the Republican Party is so stuck on stupid. Where are all the indictments coming from Republican district attorneys? Where are the indictments coming from Republican attorney generals, bringing Democrats into court? Just the same way the left now seem to be using the courts more than ever to conduct political warfare on their opponents. When are the Republicans going to get off this stuck on stupid, Mark, Gene?
You know what?
Talk me down from this, buddy.
I mean, I'm going to talk you down from the ledge.
Yes.
I don't want to see anybody operating this way. The Republicans are refraining from acting this way because, let's think about it this way. First of all, most Republican states that are run by a Republican governor, Republican legislature, those are safe states for Donald Trump already. Nothing's going to happen in those states, politically speaking. The battlegrounds are more the purple states out there, the Michigans, the Arizonas, the Pennsylvanias, those states where you have split political, separation of powers here. You may have a Republican governor, but a Democrat legislature and whatnot. I don't think that there's a cohesion and a uniformity of action to do that. And honestly, I don't want to live in a world where our country starts having politically motivated prosecutions. I think we need to fight back against that. And to be on the right side of history of that, you have to kind of practice what you preach. It's sort of the same answer about getting rid of George Santos, right? If the Republican Party acted like the Democrat Party, George Santos would still be there, much like Rashida Tlaib is still there, much like Adam Schiff is still there. We have to be better than that.
Florida who pulled a fire alarm.
Well, right. Well, Jamal Bowman pulled a fire alarm for all to see. He pleaded to a misdemeanor. Again, you weren't going to get him out because you don't control 2/3 of the legislature, right? But you can get someone from your side out and you can police your own party. And I sort of appreciate that I'm part of a party like that is willing to police their own. It may not be politically expedient, but we're better than them in that sense.
In the meantime, an already thin margin gets even thinner because the Democrat has won that seat.
Hold on a second, Rick. I got to call you on this. What piece of legislation do we need George Santos to pass that would have gotten past a Democratic-led Senate and a Democratic president? Name me one piece of legislation that George Santos is necessary to pass in order to get that law passed. Nothing was getting done this year anyway.
I'll tell you one.
Call out the stupid.
I'll give you a couple examples. The impeachment of Mayorkas and Joe Biden.
Okay, now, so hold on. Stop right there.
Let me finish. Let me finish, James. I know you're my buddy. You'll let me finish.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Mayorkas and Joe Biden are never going to get convicted in the Senate. But at least these are tools that we can use to bring out the evidence against these guys. That's why I'm for impeachments. Let's get the evidence out there so the world can see. Let's get the evidence out there for the world to see it.
And while I can appreciate that, blame the House Republicans for calling for a vote when one of the members is away from Washington, D.C. getting cancer treatment. There was no need to hold the vote that day. They could have held it another day. That's why they ended up losing that vote. It was intentional to lose that vote. There was actually a Republican at the last minute who turned on that vote so that the re-argument of it could be laid on the table and be brought back up later on. So these are games they play. And who could have foreseen the Democrats literally wheeling Al Green out of the hospital to come to the floor of the House to vote on that? So again, it's a race to the bottom that we're talking about here. And I think that somebody needs to be the adults in the room and act better than that.
Well, that's
the House of Representatives, for God's sakes.
That's why we have Gene Berardelli. Hey, Gene, before I let you go, we talked about your expertise as a trial attorney. We talked about your expertise as a book author and a video producer. We talked about your expertise in politics. I want to talk about your expertise as a New Yorker. And Gene, I want to play another little piece of video.
As Chairman, Shark Tank investor. Kevin, you had mentioned, and it was a very profound kind of comment, that, some of these other businesses do have right to be concerned, whether they like Donald Trump or not. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Well, this award, I mean, just leaving the whole Trump thing out of it and seeing what occurred here, and I'm no different than any other investor. I'm shocked at this. I can't even understand or fathom the decision at all. There's no rationale for it. And so let me give you a real-time experience I'm having regarding this, and I'm not the only one. It doesn't matter what the governor says. New York was already a loser state. Like California is a loser state. There are many loser states because of policy, high taxes, uncompetitive regulation. It was already on the top of the list of being a loser state. I would never invest in New York now, and I'm not the only person saying that. And here's a real-time situation. In development in real estate right now, the hottest asset class is very high-end.
Well, there you go, Gene. Kevin O'Leary, has called New York a loser state. Kevin O'Leary has sounded the alarm. He would never do business in the state of New York. Kevin O'Leary says he's not alone, that a lot of businesses are looking at this verdict in New York, this astronomical penalty. He called your state a loser state, Gene. There are truckers that are saying, I'm not going to deliver anything to New York City or to New York. There are other truckers that say, how about if we shut down the bridges and the tunnels? Again, Gene, this is your state, and I wanted to get your knee-jerk reaction, not just to this verdict, to this award, but what Kevin O'Leary is saying, what the truckers are threatening to do.
Well, let me preface my comments by saying this. I am a practicing attorney in the People's Republic of New York, and there is certainly a chance I can practice before judging Goron, so I'm going to tread lightly in what I'm saying. But what I will say is that this is clearly a novel use of a consumer protection law where there is no consumer that is harmed here. It certainly feels like a political prosecution that is based upon a novel theory, clearly appealable. And, there are concepts in the law of, damages. Damages should reflect the harm done to someone. But if there's no one that has been harmed, and in fact, these banks are saying that they love doing business with this whale of the Trump company and Donald Trump because they always made money off of it. I'm trying to understand why this astronomical verdict comes down. That's more than the GDP of some countries. And you have to deal with it. Clearly, I think this is appealable. I think it's going to definitely go up the ladder. It was a prosecution in search of a crime because Letitia James promised during her campaigning for Attorney General that she would go after Trump, and that's what she did. Everybody made money here. I don't get that. Now let's deal with what Kevin O'Leary had to say. And I've been saying for years that the People's Republic of New York is doomed because of these sorts of policies, because of this crony business and politics here, because everyone seems to be in the same network. And if you're not in that network, you might as well not even be in the state. Andrew Cuomo talking about conservatives need not live in New York. It's not for them. Kathy Hochul trying to reassure the business community now that, this is just happening because Donald Trump was a wrongdoer. No, he wasn't. And I would be, if I had a lot of money, if I had millions and millions of dollars, oodles of cash, I wouldn't bring it to the People's Republic of New York either. It is a loser state at this point. You're going to be investing in areas with overregulation, with incredible inflation. You're seeing crime going up in New York City as well. There's no reason to invest upstate because the population is so sparse up there. So absolutely, Kevin O'Leary is right on the money. I hate to say it about my home state, but it is a loser state. Absolutely.
I want to bring George Landrith back in. George, obviously, you're also an attorney. You've taught constitutional law. You've also been involved in politics. You ran for Congress twice. I've heard it said Donald Trump is no Bernie Madoff. In other words, he's not a crook. He's not stolen money from anyone. He's not deceived anybody. As Gene says, the banks love the guy. What do you think, George, this is going to, what effect is this fine, this $347 million fine, what do you think this is going to do for Donald Trump, the candidate?
Well, I think it makes it very, very clear that this is a political persecution, not prosecution. It's just kind of obvious. You don't have to have a law degree to spot this. It just kind of stinks to high heaven. It's like, you know, you open the door and the odor is overwhelming. And I think that the judge is pretty stupid in that sense, because if you were trying to impact an election, you might want to make it look like you were a real judge. You might want to make it look like you were following the law. And I don't even get the impression they tried to do that. They basically just, you know, yeah, we're out to get Trump. We hate him. We want to get him. And if you can tell that from the way I talk and what I've done, no problem. I don't care. It's like, okay, fine. And I think you've seen, if you remember, right after the 2022 election, where Florida had the really overwhelming outcome, the number one guy in the polls at that point was Ron DeSantis. And I think all these political prosecutions that have amounted to persecutions have really helped Donald Trump, to be blunt. And so he's now overwhelmingly leading in every poll. And even Democrats are now, when you ask them, what do you think of these prosecutions? Even they kind of go, it doesn't really look serious to me. It looks pretty crappy. So anyhow, I think it's bound to help him. I'm not saying, I don't think the fine will stand, because I think if it's paid $350 million in fines, that's going to hurt. but
I don't think that makes him an underdog.
Well, it certainly makes him an underdog in the perception of the public. But I don't think this is going to hurt him as much, this fine, as people think, because news broke over the weekend about the SEC approving the merger between Truth Social and his SPAC that is going to bring Truth Social public. And he stands to earn somewhere between $4 and $5 billion from that. So, you know, you can go after his wallet as much as you want to. I think he's going to have plenty of money to go around. And just to put a finer point on this whole thing, I think people are starting to realize it wasn't Donald Trump cooking any books to present to a bank. He had professionals. He had accountants. He had people he hired to do all these things. And the banks accepted it, did their own due diligence as well. Same thing in Georgia right now when they're seeing the spectacle with Fani Willis and Nathan Wade and all of this. They're starting to see in the open what's going on with these prosecutions, how they're falling down like a house of cards. Now, ultimately, what will happen in Georgia, I don't know. I don't think Fani Willis is getting disqualified, but it's certainly going to delay the trial to beyond the election, I would think. So ultimately, we don't know where we're going with a lot of these cases and a lot of these prosecutions, especially with this Fani Wade thing. There's going to be an in-camera review of materials from an attorney for Nathan Wade that he didn't want to talk about because attorney-client confidentiality was invoked by Mr. Wade. So buckle up, folks. It's going to be a bumpy ride in 2024. And certainly Trump seems more ingrained, more dug in than I've seen in a long time to really shove it back in everybody's face on the other side of the aisle and push through to regain the presidency. That was a really great interview. I had a lot of fun talking politics with some good friends. But now I want to know what you guys think about all this. We covered a lot of ground in the video. I want to know what your thoughts are about all this lawfare involving former President Donald Trump. Let's get in the comments about it. And as always, like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. I'll see you in those comments where we can all get together and talk about all the shenanigans and buffoonery happening every day this week in DUMBmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.